Now? Now it's better? Okay. So, hello. My name is Mehrschad Zaeri Esfahani. I think this is the most difficult part of our presentation. I'm the founder of ParseCube in Germany. And we were talking about 2 or 3 years ago, we were talking about the problems that we are faced to in the publishing houses. So the problem is actually that people, the authors who want to write the books, they just bring their manuscripts and they are maybe in Word documents or they are maybe in InDesign documents. And the problem inside the publishing houses is actually, I think a lot of you know about this problem, that they don't really care, the authors, about the structure of the document. So it costs a lot of money to work it out and bring the document in a proper structure. So in one of our talks with the publishing houses, there was a really nice there was a nice part where one of the bosses of the publishing house told us we have some problems with a semi-biomechanical process in our house. So I had no idea what it meant. So I said, excuse me, what is it? And he said, well, this is actually a manual process. So this is why it's called the biomechanical. And there is someone sitting on the computer and just checking the structure of the Word document, for example, and then they make it in the proper way, and then they can start to produce the books. So I said, okay, I know now what a biomechanical process is, but why semi-biomechanical? And he said, well, it's not totally manual because these people are working with a computer. So I thought, okay, now something's wrong because actually we have all the techniques to use the technique to make this semi-biomechanical process to a sort of full automated process. So it was something about 2 or 3 years ago we started with this process. The idea was talked and exchanged between me and Manuel Montero from Data2check. And now we have a sort of solution. It's a free service that we built up. That means we can use this service. It's free to use, and I hope that a lot of you would use this process and just give us some feedback how you find the process. So you can upload your documents. It could be an IDML document or it could be a Word document, and then let the process of proof of the structure. It could be automated. You can do it not in a biomechanical way, but in a totally automated way. Well, the people who really made up this process, who wrote the program and all this stuff, this is my colleague, Mr. Hauke Brandes, and this is Nico Kucherara, who is somewhere there, yeah, up there. And now we don't really want to show you some presentation, but we are going to show the process in a live presentation. Please.
Okay. So, what is this service all about? As Mehrschad told you already, it's about automatic proofreading of documents, and it focuses on docx and IDML documents, so Word and InDesign. But it aims to be a platform, so we have additional formats which we basically support as well, but not with our own implementations. We support EPUB proofreading by using the EPUB checker, the open source tool. But that's basically just a proof of concept, how we can augment the platform with additional formats. So the platform allows to check or validate the documents that the authors may directly upload into the platform. And the results are either generated as HTML reports, so you have a nice report and can look at what is wrong with your document. But a very interesting feature is that the results may be integrated into the original document as well. So you can see, you can download a modified version of your document with inline comments and notifications about where were problems and what problems there were. Okay, in addition to validation, we offer a conversion service to convert the documents into a generic version of XML, which is configurable as well. So if there are existing XML workflows in the company using the tool, they may use it as a first step to get a reliable version, XML version of the docx or IDML document. Okay, as we are offering this platform as a service, there is a simple, at the moment really very basic collaboration model, which means you can register as a group on the platform, and you have different permission models. You can have, for example, if you're a publisher and you want to define rules for the documents for your authors, then you may do so. You can configure the rules via a graphical tool, and then you can give permissions to your authors to validate, but not to edit the configuration. So you can you have a very, very basic model that you are sure that your author may use the platform, but you are in control of the rules that are validated. Okay, so we should look at it perhaps live. And this is basically what it looks like at the moment. I am already logged in, and I can see that this user has one validation configuration for a docx workflow, and he already validated a document as well. So let's see how this works in practice. If I want to create new rules, we don't start we don't start from scratch, but because it will be too complicated for many users to enter the right IDs for paragraph formats or character inline formats. So we say we have a different approach. We use a template document which contains all the features that should be allowed for an author to use. Every character format, every paragraph format that should be allowed for the authors to use must be present in the document already. If the author is allowed to use images, at least one image should be in the template document. So you basically create a document with all the features that should be allowed to use, and use that to create an initial configuration. So you can do this. We've got a very simple Word document file here, which I upload now. So the document is uploaded to the platform, analyzed, and an initial configuration is created automatically, which I can modify now via this configuration dialog. So first of all, I've got an identification, so I say perhaps this is rule set for books, blah, blah, blah. Anything goes. And here I can do some description. Here you can see the simple permission model. I can give other users of the platform the permissions to edit this configuration, and I may give other users of the platform the permission to use this configuration, so to use it to validate their documents. Okay, we've got several different components. Perhaps the most important one is the rules for the basic document structure. So we can do some constraints about the order and the nestedness of the different paragraph formats. I can say I want the first paragraph of the document to be of a specific style. All these paragraph styles, which you can see here, were extracted from the template document, so I didn't have to enter them manually. I can say it should not be one of these, it must be one of this list, or I have no restrictions on the first element. I can say for any other paragraph style, for instance, that it is only allowed after specific other paragraphs. So I've got a paragraph style here for the abstract of the document, and I want the abstract only to be possible directly after the document heading. So I say I have a restriction. The previous paragraph must not be, but must be from this list, and it must be the document header. And this is all I have to do. So I've got this rule configured now for the abstract paragraph style. OK. Furthermore, I can restrict what inline formats are possible in the different paragraph styles. For instance, I want to disallow link styles in headings or anything like that. I've got a different section here. The character styles in the abstract paragraph style that are allowed. I can say I want to disallow the intensive. This is a citation format. This is a default name from the German version of Word, so bear with me. This is not English. It comes from the template document. OK, whenever a rule is violated, I can enter a comment which will appear in the modified version of the document afterwards. So I can explain to the author here why, for instance, the document header must be immediately before the abstract paragraph. Abstract is only allowed directly after. You get the picture. I can explain the author why this rule is in place at this moment. But this is optional. This is just to give the authors a clue when they validate their documents. OK, so I can do that for any paragraph style. So some very basic structure configuration, which I can do here. And in addition to that, I can see what kind of character styles were present in the template document. And they are all allowed by default if I don't restrict their usage in specific paragraph styles. OK, so this is what I can say about the structure of the document. Another little tool which we built in is mainly used for, or it can be used for a lot of things, but the usage scenario we had in mind was to detect and repair certain microtypographic problems, like, for instance, abbreviations which are sometimes used with spaces in between the abbreviation or not. So I can say that I find all instances of EG, for example, with a space in between. This is just looking for them and marking them with a comment. But I can also do a replacement directly and say, it's just a global search and replace in all the document. I want to replace it by EG without a space, for example. It's also possible to do this with regular expressions for advanced users, of course. And as always, you can write a comment and rationalize this rule for the author. So we had, for instance, several usages of D2C, and I want to enforce that D2C, which is short for data2check, of course, should be written in uppercase letters. So this is this component. We have got a global configuration about what additional features in the document are allowed and what features are disallowed. So one important thing here is the use of pictures, of course. As there were pictures in the template document, the default is that all picture formats are permitted. I can restrict the images to be embedded or not embedded. And I can restrict them to be absolutely positioned or not as well. I've got the possibility to say that if I want to go to print, I want to enforce all pictures that are used in the document to be TIFF pictures and not JPEGs or any other style. So I can say that change tracking should be disabled in the document. There shouldn't be any change tracking annotations or comments. I can disallow text boxes and shapes and all kinds of stuff. You can basically disallow everything which may hinder a clean publishing process afterwards. Okay, as I told you already, we've got also one component that transforms the document into a generic XML structure, and that XML structure is based on the names of the paragraph and character styles, which is already pretty good, which is pretty usable. We have often found that it is enough to have a really good XML source for further processing without any further configuration. But if I want to configure this generic XML, I can do so as well here graphically without editing some source code also. So I can say the root element should be a specific name, so maybe it should read document instead of our generic root level element is called root, I think, which makes some sense as well. I can rename any further element, so any element which represents an abstract paragraph, I could rename them to, I don't know, summary or something like that. Okay, so you see it's pretty basic. You have got not the full power of doing programmatic restrictions, but on the other hand, it's very easy to configure and to use. So we save this configuration because we want to check if this works at all. So I go to the documents section of the platform, and here I can see what kinds of checks are valid for this for the current user. There are some validations that are built into the platform and not configurable, so they are usable by any user of the platform. This is the usage of EPUB check, for instance. There is a basic IDML validation that checks if the IDML will probably not cause any problems when going to EPUB, when converting to EPUB from the IDML directly. And we've got the specific configurations which we have configured for ourselves. For instance, the rule set for books, which I just configured, is available. So I want to check a file. I will check the same file which I've used as a template document now, because it probably won't be valid anymore. It was valid when I created the initial rule set, but I modified the rule set and I disallowed certain image types, for instance. So we expect that there should be problems when we validate this. Okay, so we upload it and look at what happens. And I hope something happens, yes. Okay, so we've got the result list here of any document that I have already checked. And the result is that there are some problems, which is this little orange button here. So these are the artifacts which are generated by the validation. One thing is the annotated version of the document, which I can look at right now. So this is, perhaps I should have shown you the original document at all. So the original document looked like this. We had a paragraph format abstract, which you've already seen in the configuration. We've got an image, we've got some inline formats here, and well, it's just a very basic Word document. And what we got after the validation looks like this. So, and it doesn't look like it should do, which is a little bit disturbing. Okay. This is my fault, because when I chose the file, this is something which may be optimized a little bit. I have to I have to select the rule set afterwards. So this was a different rule set with different character and paragraph styles. So they were all unknown, and we've got basically a very invalid document. So now we do the same thing with the rule set which we just created. And once again, we look at the commented version of the document, which is in my download folder. Now, this looks a little bit better. So, we have said that in the abstract we didn't want to have the inline format intensive citation, which is shown here, and this is the comment about this. As you saw, we can configure our own comments, but if there are no comments configured, automatic comments are generated by the platform. So the author can directly see not only how broken his document is, but also where in the document directly. And he can accept changes, for instance, for the replacements. We can insert them as change tracking events. So the author might look at every separate instance of search and replace operations and just say, well, this is okay, this replacement is not okay. So we've got a problem with the picture, and the message for this is the picture format is JPEG, which is forbidden because the only permitted formats are TIFF and TIFF, well, TIFF with double F and TIFF with F, because we only look at the extension at the moment. So, and we've got some other instances of our micro-typographic correction, and that is basically it, which is pretty nice if you've got a long document, and it's basically correct, but you've got only some problems somewhere. You just look at the comments, and you're ready to go. Okay, apart from the commented version of the document, we offer an XML version of the document, as I said, which is basically a generically created XML file with the same content as the document. And in some little instances, we might look at it. Okay. It's not Oxygen's fault, it's the fault of my notebook, of course, that this takes a little bit longer. Okay, so this is what our generic XML document looks like. We've got a basic structure with a head element and some metadata, which is extracted from the metadata of the document, either Word or IDML. And we've got the body, and the body is usually structured by the names of the paragraph styles which exist. So we had a paragraph style document header, which leads to an element document header here. We had a document style abstract, but I renamed it to summary in the configuration. So this element is not called abstract now, but summary. So I can adapt it to some specific needs of my XML, for example. But as you see, the whole content of the document is available, and it's clean and very easily structured XML, so it's very easy to process. On top of that, we've got the validation results in the form of swirl. So not all checks are implemented with schematron, but some are, and we use it as our generic result format. And we've got also a version of the validation result in form of HTML, which looks like this. Okay, so we've got the name of the configuration which has been used to check the file, and we can see that we have had several problems, and well, we've got some details about them, and a very basic preview of the document in pseudo XML format. Okay, so that's basically what we wanted to show of the platform. Perhaps a little bit about the architecture which we have used. Okay, so just some of the components which are used here. The persistence layer for the whole application is an XSDB instance, and we've got distributed validators, which may be on any other computer, and the communication infrastructure between the web front end and the validators, which are in their own processes, is Redis. So we use one big Redis instance just to do all the communication between the different components of the system. The verification pipeline itself is at the moment driven by XMLSH, which is perhaps a curious choice at first sight. This is based on our development model. We have developed the validation pipeline relatively independently from all the GUI stuff, and it was basically a bunch of batch scripts which called into Saxon. And this is not very good because it's for a very specific platform only. It runs only on Windows. It runs only on the command line. It's not integratable as a component. So we looked for a possibility to make minimal changes to the existing and working pipeline, but we wanted to be able to use them on any platform and on the command line as a software component in a larger architecture or whatever. And so we just transformed the batch files into XMLSH files. If XMLSH is not known, it's basically a shell which is implemented in Java with some specific XML functionality, which is pretty nice. It looks a little bit like XML-enhanced bash. So we had got minimal portability issues when transforming from the batch files to XMLSH. And on the other hand, XMLSH is extensible via plugins, so we can integrate that script directly into our Redis infrastructure. So basically, we have really a shell script which runs and looks for validation requests automatically from the platform, which turned out to be pretty nice. But on the other hand, XMLSH is a project which deserves more love than it gets at the moment. So we are thinking about perhaps migrating the pipeline to XProds. There were some technical issues why we didn't do it yet, but we may do so in the future. So where are we in time? Okay. Good. The front end is just your run-of-the-mill basic Spring web application. We have got several components which are logic-heavy and running client-side. We decided not to use JavaScript, but TypeScript, which is a statically typed JavaScript extension by Microsoft. And this turned out to be a really good choice because TypeScript has a very flexible type system, and it allows you, for instance, to convert an XML or JSON schema, which you use for the communication with the backend, directly into valid TypeScript types. So you can not only be a little bit more sure when you write your configuration editor that you don't forget about elements or about the naming of any elements, but you have also great IDE support. You basically can type, okay, from the configuration I want to have the first element which is of this type, and this type says it contains an ID and a name, and you basically cannot go wrong at all. If you do any changes to your configuration model, you just regenerate your TypeScript types, and the compiler tells you where you have to adapt your editor so that it runs once again. So that turned out really nice. As I said, the validation pipeline as a component is now usable via command line, via a web interface, or via a very simple REST API. So it's easily integratable into very different kinds of platforms. But the basic idea behind all this is that it runs as a service, so you have got basically no installation problems at all. It just is there. You can find out if it suits your needs, and if it doesn't, the idea is to be expandable, of course. because we've got very basic structure tests now, which may be good enough for some projects, which are probably not good enough for any kind of project. But we want to have a platform so we can collect perhaps the needs of different clients, of different publishers, or of different customers, and integrate them back into the platform. So as the time is coming to an end, I would perhaps just ask if there are any questions about our tool or any of the related technologies. Okay. So, any questions?
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So, any question? Okay, I have an answer. Lunch is in 10 minutes. Now I need question. I have two there. One on top, one over there. Yes. So, perhaps.
Yeah, I had a question about the kind of structural checks that you were able to do.
Yes.
So you presented some checks that, for instance, you considering a paragraph, you checked the style of the immediate previous sibling, right?
Yeah.
Can you do some checks on elements earlier in the content? So I'm thinking about checking, for instance, that a headings hierarchy is properly nested. So you encounter a heading of level 3, and you want to check that it within the previous heading actually has a level 2.
Yes. Well, for the basic structure test, we only consider the paragraph immediately before one, but we have got additionally tests for the nestedness of the nested hierarchy of the headings. I didn't show it, which was probably not a good idea, but I can show you right now. Any paragraph has a certain function. A standard paragraph is just anything, but it may also have the function of being a heading level 1. And if you've got another type of paragraph, like I say now, Apocalypse Now is used as heading level 2, then the heading structure is checked always. I cannot even disable it. I can disable it by saying that there are no headings in the document. And if I try to configure it illegally, now I've got a format for heading level 1 and one for heading level 2, but none for heading level 2. This is already shown as an error in the configuration directly. Yeah? Okay.
Thank you. Oops. Thank you. Sorry.
Hi. I was wondering how you store your business rules, your validation rules, and whether you'd considered some variant of schematron to do so.
Excuse me, could you repeat the question?
Yes, sorry. I was wondering what format you use to store your validation rules, and whether you considered using something like schematron so that more complicated scenarios could maybe be integrated using schematron.
Well, we've got a custom XML format. As we use XSDB as a persistence layer, it makes sense to store the configuration in an XML model. And the model is specific to the different components. So we've got one configuration model for the structural rules, one configuration model for the search and replace rules. And this is basically the granularity of our component model in the backend pipeline. So if we want to augment the platform with additional tools or additional validation checks, then we basically only have to have to specify a new configuration format. We write a GUI abstraction for it, so we can edit it on the platform directly, and we execute it on the pipeline in the end. So I don't know, does this answer your question? It's a specific format for every component. So we've got these structural rules, and there's a very direct representation of exactly these rules which are possible to configure in our XML model.
I was just wondering if there was maybe a trick that had been missed here to reuse an existing technology, maybe a bit more of a
No, it's at the moment. It's if we want to integrate existing technology, we would write a configuration format which allows us to specify whatever configuration an existing tool, for instance, may offer. But we have to do this abstraction step in between.
I did have a separate question. Is that okay?
Okay.
I was just wondering for the conversion into XML, if you've got any way of dealing with grouping. So, for instance, I've worked with word conversions for things like dialogues in plays and being able to group at quite low levels as well as heading hierarchies.
Yeah. There's some basic support for the structure which is imposed by the different heading levels. And there's one possibility if I've got, as I've shown you, I've configured now that abstract is a paragraph which signifies a document, a heading level 1. And for heading elements, you can have, no, wait a second. I might be able to, oh, yeah, it's invalid at the moment. So, well, I can just tell you because we are running out of time. You can tell in the XML configuration if you want to have a wrapping element around the heading and all its content, which because that is something which often when we process the document furthermore is bad if we don't have the proper nestedness of the content and the headings. So we've got a feature for that already built in. But that is about all what we offer for doing more structural XML. Yeah?
Thank you very much.